his fellow Democrats last week to go further in depth on the midterms and what the election means to the president and his policies. I recently sat down with former House Speaker Newt Gingrich.
Well, I do think it's fair to say that the election Tuesday night was a breakout. They're going to have the most state legislators in the history of the Republican Party. So in 158 years, this will be literally the highest number of legislators. They control more legislative bodies, House and Senate, than ever in American history. They gain governorships, they gain Senate seats. They're at the highest number in the House of Representatives since 1928. So I think you have to say it was a remarkable, first of all, it was a repudiation of Obama. I mean, he said at Northwestern University on October 2nd, my policies are on the ballot. And the country apparently agreed with him, and they decisively defeated his policies.
And yet no sooner is the election over than he and others on the left speak unflatteringly about the turnout, saying 2/3 of voters didn't show up. Are they able to invalidate the results of last Tuesday in some way?
No, I mean, I think in their own minds they might, but it doesn't matter. Under our constitutional system, we had an election. The election actually had remarkable results. John Kasich, for example, in Ohio got 26% of the African-American vote, was endorsed by the largest African-American newspaper in his state. A number of people did very well with the Latino vote. Cory Gardner would not have won had he not broken through with the Latino vote. We did very well almost everywhere with Asian Americans. And so there were some really fundamental changes happening. And President Obama can deny reality, which he's been doing all along. So if he wants to pretend that this election didn't occur, he can do that, but it'll make the last 2 years of his presidency an absurdity.
And not only was there election on Tuesday, but now we hear the Supreme Court will again entertain a case dealing with the constitutionality of Obamacare. This has to be a 1-2 combination that the White House really doesn't want to have to deal with.
Well, this particular case is a mortal threat to Obamacare because the law, I'm not a lawyer, but the law is very clear. And the law says that the government can pay subsidies for state-based exchanges. Now, 36 states refuse to set up an exchange. So in 36 states, 2/3 of the country, the exchanges are run by the federal government. The argument of the opponents is that the law is so clear that there's no provision for, and apparently the debate on the floor made this very clear, there's no provision for subsidies if there is a federal website and a federal exchange. Now, if that happens, if the court upholds that, it basically takes the heart out of Obamacare because it means they will not be able to subsidize the purchases of people in 2/3 of the states, and people simply won't be able to afford it. I mean, it will guarantee having to pass very dramatic change in Obamacare, probably in the first 3 months of next year or within 3 months of whenever the Supreme Court makes the decision.
Mindful of that, going into the next Congress, you already outlined the historic gains. You're a historian by trade, a Speaker of the House by experience. I'd like you to lend that historical perspective to do what professors so often ask, compare and contrast. We came in 20 years ago, my class, 70 plus of us, a smaller class, but it expands the Republican majority when they take the oath of office next January. How will that class and the mission of this new Congress differ from what we faced 20 years ago?
Well, I think it's profoundly different. I think when we won, with your class providing an enormous part of that victory, we were the first Republican majority in 40 years. I mean, it was such a huge shock. Nobody in the elite media thought it was possible. We had zero control for 40 years. We have now controlled the House with this election for 18 of the last 22 years. So you've had a very profound shift. They intend to pass bills that are bipartisan. I mean, when they send the Keystone Pipeline to the White House, which they'll do, I think, very early, it's going to have a lot of Democrats voting for it. And the president's not going to be in a position to say, well, this is a terrible Republican bill. This is going to be a bipartisan bill. And I think it's going to make for a very different 2 years than Barack Obama thinks.
Well, he's been there and done that as Speaker of the House. Coming up, we have more with former House Speaker Newt Gingrich about the days ahead for President Obama, for the Republican majority in the House and Senate, and about the next occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. America's Forum continues right after this.